Alejandro Jodorowsky is perhaps one of the strangest filmmakers out there. And I am not just talking about his movies. The man is quite the character himself.
Why I will make picture for 2 hours who cost $400 million, and the person will come there, will see the picture, will relax, will be raped by the 3 dimension. You need to say the 3 dimension was not with your eyes, but with your action.
He's mostly known for his psychedelic western El Topo, his spiritual epic The Holy Mountain, and his giallo-esque horror film Santa Sangre, all of which are among cinema's most bizarre works. But none of them approach the sheer insanity of his debut film Fando y Lis. It is perhaps Jodorowsky's most unrestrained work, the rawest distillation of his creativity and ego. But how did he do it? How did he make a film like this? Well, sit still and find out as I tell the tale of how an eccentric theatre director with little filmmaking experience, no technical skill and no studio backing broke all rules and boundaries and made one of cinema's most bizarre films. This is the story of Fando y Lis. The year is 1953, and the then 24-year-old Jodorowsky is heading for France to quote, save Surrealism. He had already enjoyed some success as an actor, puppeteer, and avant-garde theatre director in his country of birth, Chile, but felt that he had already learned everything he could there, and that he needed to seek new horizons. Immediately after arriving, he would call the co-founder, leader, and principal theorist of the Surrealist movement, André Breton.
I called him by telephone at 3 o'clock in the morning. I say, I am here. And he said, who are you? Jodorowsky. But who are you? I came here to save Surrealism. I am the biggest movie maker of the Surrealism. I said, what picture? I will do it, not steal. I want to see you immediately. I said, no, tomorrow at 1 o'clock because I am sleeping, it's too late. No, you are Surrealist now. No, tomorrow. And then never.
Their meeting would be postponed for 7 years, during which Jodorowsky was busy learning to be a mime. When they eventually met up, it would end up a disappointment to Jodorowsky, as he found Breton and the Surrealist movement as a whole had become too respectable, and Jodorowsky disagreed with Breton's dislike of such things as science fiction and rock music, genres which Jodorowsky would use in his future works. They even had a disagreement over pornography.
He hated pornography. In that time they are not sex shop, no? And then I have an enormous collection of pornographic photos because I say that is art. For me, pornography was a big mystery, a magic mystery, a mystical mystery, all that enormous thing, like who go inside that enormous hole. It was incredible.
It was at this point that Jodorowsky set out to no longer save Surrealism, but to outdo it, to reach new heights of illogic and provocation. He found 2 other like-minded artists, playwright, poet, and writer Fernando Arrabal, along with illustrator, cartoonist, and novelist Roland Topo. Together, the 3 of them would go on to found the Panic movement, and Arrabal would go on to play a vital part in the creation of Fando y Lis. Deriving its name from the Greek god Pan, the Panic movement was a form of chaotic, improvised performance art that eschewed the use of written text and aimed to be as shocking as possible. A perfect example of a Panic performance would be the group's debut, Melodrama Sacramento, a 4-hour show with no storyline or logic, just an explosive sequence of chaotic and transgressive imagery, during which a leather-clad Jodorowsky would slaughter chickens, while naked women covered in honey gyrated spasmodically around him. He would also depict a rabbi getting his heart torn out, throw turtles and apricots at the audience, and have Jodorowsky come out of a giant plastic vagina, all of which was scored by a live rock band, but the sound of it would totally just improvise the music. It is this ethos of chaotic improvisation and provocation which Jodorowsky would continue with Fando y Lis. Jodorowsky moved to Mexico in the 60s and continued his theatre work there. Then, in the latter half of the decade, Jodorowsky's interest turned to filmmaking, an art form he had always aspired to. His journey to becoming a filmmaker was appropriately irregular. He did not enroll in any film school or work on a film set or learn anything about film in general. Instead, he would practice mime, study the tarot, delve into every world religion, alchemy and mysticism, along with learning puppetry, acting, writing and poetry. All skills and knowledge which he would go on to utilize in his filmography. When choosing a subject for his debut, he decided to adapt a play by his fellow Panic member, Fernando Arrabal, that play being Fando y Lis. He had already directed it on stage, and in true Panic fashion, he would not use a script. Instead, he used a one-page summary of the play and his own memories of it, improvising much of the story and imagery as he went along. This is in keeping with his surrealist roots. Surrealism, in the simplest terms, was a movement centered around exploring the unconscious mind through art and writing, and many surrealist techniques were designed for this purpose. For example, automatic drawing, where an artist draws without conscious thoughts, allowing their unconscious mind to spill onto the page without censorship. By adapting Fando y Lis in such a manner, Jodorowsky was following in the footsteps of his surrealist forebearers. That is not to say that he had no plan whatsoever. He would have had to plan some things out to get the dozens of actors and extras for his film, along with the props, costumes and locations. But while shooting, he was not beholden to any set plan, and allowed his unconscious to reign supreme. This method would cause a few problems during the shoot, when Jodorowsky made choices without thinking of their future ramifications, such as this scene where Fando and Lis splatter a room with ink. The dolls there were rented from a collector, and the crew had to spend days cleaning them to avoid paying for their destruction. The room itself was lent to the crew by the Mexican government, and they were none too pleased to see what had happened to it. Jodorowsky's inexperience and improvisation would also lead to difficulties when working with the directors of photography. He knew nothing about the technical side of filmmaking, the different kinds of shots and lenses, and did not use a shot list or storyboard for his film. So, to guide the two DPs, Jodorowsky tied himself to one of them and pointed to what he wanted in frame. One would imagine this would annoy the DPs and sour their relations with Jodorowsky, but that seems not to have been the case with one of them, Rafael Corchidi, shown here playing a minor role in the movie, who would go on to work with Jodorowsky on his following two films. Because of Jodorowsky's inexperience with filmmaking and his irregular way of working with his DPs, one would expect the film to turn out terrible, and although it by no means looks amazing, there are still multiple shots and sequences that are both visually interesting and rather impressive considering Jodorowsky's lack of knowledge. And that is because what Jodorowsky lacked in experience, he made up for with his creativity and artistic ability, which he honed during his theater years. His lack of experience was not the only thing holding him back. To make the film, Jodorowsky had to jump through several hurdles, one being common among amateur indie filmmakers: funding. To make the film, he would need a budget of $100,000, a sum he had no way of gathering himself, and going to a studio was out of the question, as the likelihood of any studio financing a film such as Fando y Lis was next to nil, due in equal parts to Jodorowsky's inexperience and his improvisational style of filmmaking. And, well, just look at the film. Can you imagine Jodorowsky pitching this to a group of investors and studio heads? But a series of events that were both fortunate and tragic would lead to Jodorowsky getting his budget. He employed a young man with Down syndrome by the name of Samuel Rosenberg, shown here playing a minor role in the movie, who he hired as his personal assistant and driver.
I say you will be my assistant director and my chauffeur, my driver. All the parents say I was crazy because this boy driver, in a way, our life was always in danger. And when I was directing an actor, he was between me and the actors. We need to push away. But I loved the guy and was my assistant director.
Samuel would commit suicide shortly after the film's completion by lighting his mattress on fire while smoking weed. Much to Jodorowsky's luck, Samuel's father was a rich jewelry salesman, and he greatly appreciated all that Jodorowsky had done for his son, so much so that he would gift him the $100,000. Another hurdle came in the form of Mexico's directors' unions. To make a feature-length film, Jodorowsky needed to get permission from these unions, and pay them as well. The idea of getting permission to make art did not sit well with Jodorowsky, so he made his film regardless. But he still needed assent from the unions to show his picture, but that only applied to movies of feature length. When it came to short films, there was no such problem. So, what Jodorowsky did instead was to split the movie in 4 parts and claim it was a compilation of short films, a method he would use again when making El Topo. Now onto the film itself. It is perhaps Jodorowsky's most impenetrable work, offering up a non-stop barrage of obscure symbolism, loud uncomfortable noises, and a story that feels meandering and random, with many side characters and scenes seemingly coming out of nowhere. It is also cut together with the grace of a hedge clipper, many scenes getting interspliced for reasons that are only clear once one reads into their symbology. The story centers around the titular Fando and Lis, two young lovers, the latter of whom is paraplegic, who are on a journey through an apocalyptic wasteland in search for the mythical city of Tar. This rather simple setup is complicated by Jodorowsky, who expresses much of the story through symbolism. This makes a lot of character choices and scenes seem incomprehensible, especially on a first viewing. Though behind its obtuse style and thick layer of symbolism is a simple story of two people trying to escape from an oppressive society. Fando and Lis's search for Tar is a metaphorical journey for freedom. But freedom from what? Well, from the corrupt, exploitative and oppressive world where they live. Throughout their journey, Fando and Lis meet up with corrupt figures of authority, be it the upper-class socialites who torment the characters for their own enjoyment, or the perverted Pope who lusts after Lis, and of course Fando's own parents who control and suppress their own son. By depicting these figures of authority in such a manner, Jodorowsky offers up criticisms of their real-life counterparts, commenting on the blithe sadism with which the upper class treats those beneath them, the hypocrisy and corruption of organized religion, and the oppressive effect parents can have over their children, social critiques which he will expand upon and continue in his future works. By searching for Tar, Fando and Lis are trying to liberate themselves from these figures, Tar being a symbol for freedom. It is also not a physical place but a state of mind, one of the film's title cards stating that Tar is inside their heads. I believe this room, which Jodorowsky frequently cuts to, is a metaphorical depiction of Tar, evidenced by the fact that it is one of the few points of the film where Fando and Lis are free and happy with one another, the only place where Lis is able to walk. This is only a broad analysis. Jodorowsky packed so much into the film that a complete breakdown would quadruple the length of this video. And due to the film's open-ended nature, it is an analysis which may be only particular to me, meaning that each audience member is able to come to their own individual interpretations. So if you are not for analyzing films, Fando y Lis is a cinematic buffet. But for those who dislike the prospect of having to delve through the film's dense symbolic layer, Fando y Lis has so much more to offer. One can also appreciate Fando y Lis as a spectacle, as the film offers up a flood of interesting visuals and scenes that are enjoyable for their aesthetics alone. And even though one may not understand it fully, the film moves at such a frantic and energetic pace that it keeps your attention throughout, no matter how lost you get. It is also interesting to fans of Jodorowsky's later works, as one can see the origins of techniques he would improve upon on his follow-up, El Topo, and in my opinion come close to perfecting on his third feature, The Holy Mountain. Techniques such as loud, uncomfortable sound design, the use of real people instead of professional actors, expressing his story through symbolism, and his rapid, efficient editing. Whether one watches it to glean its meaning or simply to see something crazy, Fando y Lis is an interesting film either way, while also being an impressive debut considering all that held Jodorowsky back. Even after the film's completion, there still remained several hurdles in Jodorowsky's path, one being that no one showed much interest in distributing it. It would stay unwatched for a year until its premiere at the 1968 Acapulco Film Festival. It was there that Jodorowsky would cause one of his greatest controversies, as the audience were offended by the movie to such an extent that they turned into a lynch mob, and Jodorowsky had to be escorted out of the theater for his own safety. It did not help that his two main actors, Diana Mariscal and Sergio Kleiner, would join the fray, Mariscal going so far as to blame Jodorowsky for the anorexia she had developed after the shooting of Fando y Lis wrapped up. Jodorowsky would even receive death threats from a fellow director, Emilio Fernandez, one of Mexico's most prolific filmmakers, who had committed murder twice before, though Jodorowsky would make peace with the man afterwards.
And then I went to the party they give for the stars of the Festival of Acapulco, and he was drinking. I asked to the servant what he liked to drink. He said he liked every night to drink a bottle of whiskey. And then I say, send for me of my part another bottle of whiskey. And then they say to him, Jodorowsky send that to you. He started to drink. When he finished the first bottle, asked, I want to see him. Yeah, I went to see him. But when I say he killed two persons, really he killed two persons. No, it's not a joke. And then I sit with him. I say, this is me. You want to kill me? Amigo, you give me the whiskey. and take me his big arms comme ça, and he finished the second bottle. And completely drunk, say to the press, in the next picture of Jodorowsky, I want to be his assistant. And then that was a big thing for me.
Strangely enough, the most controversial parts of the movie were not the multiple scenes of Lis getting abused or the many sacrilegious images. No, what really riled people up was this scene where a group of hags play poker over who gets to have sex with the guy next to them. According to Jodorowsky, it was because of the respect that is allotted to mothers in Mexican culture that people were none too pleased to see a typical maternal figure depicted as a gambling, greedy lecher. The film's reception abroad, although not as heated, was no more successful. Reviews ranged from lukewarm to negative, many comparing him unfavorably to Federico Fellini and of course Luis Buñuel.
And the New York Times said, Fando and Lis are so far to arrive to Tar than Jodorowsky to arrive to Buñuel.
To further compound the film's failure, it would be re-edited for its US release, and was only shown there to capitalize off of Fellini's Satyricon, which came out the same year. Jodorowsky would spend 3 days distraught and defeated, even after beating all the odds, jumping through all the hurdles and achieving what most aspiring filmmakers can only dream of. His efforts resulted in failure, and Jodorowsky's future as a director seemed closed off forever, but he would be undeterred, and despite the cavalcade of hatred and vitriol, set out to make another film. That being his blood-spattered acid western, El Topo, a film which will forever cement his place in cinematic history and jumpstart his career. But that is a story for another day.
Now I will go to Mexico, I will make a cowboy picture, and all the Americans will come to see the picture.
For a long time, copies of Fando y Lis were hard to come by, even more so than most of his films. Then, in 2020, it was re-released by Arrow Video on Blu-ray, along with its 2 follow-ups, and Jodorowsky's documentary, Psychomagic and Art That Heals. It is thanks to this that Fando y Lis can be re-evaluated by modern audiences, and perhaps finally given the praise and recognition it deserves. It is by no means Jodorowsky's best, and is quite rough in places, but it's still a must-watch for fans of his and lovers of experimental cinema, as there are few other films that are as anarchic, bizarre and surreal as Fando y Lis. If you enjoy what you saw here, then consider liking and subscribing, and perhaps you might want to help me find subject matters for future videos by naming other films with interesting production histories behind them in the comments below.